Captain Benjamin Miller rode through the autumn-painted forests of western Massachusetts, the crisp October air of 1775 filling his lungs. At 35, he cut a solitary figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with thoughtful grey eyes that had seen too much loss. 6 years a widower, Benjamin had thrown himself into the Patriot cause with the same dedication he once gave his beloved wife Eleanor. His fellow soldiers respected him, but few truly knew him, the quiet man who read poetry by firelight and carried a small sketch of his late wife next to his heart. Today's mission was straightforward. Deliver dispatches to the Continental Army, outpost near Sheffield, and return to headquarters in Concord. Simple tasks were welcome after months of complex strategy meetings. The forests offered peace that war councils could not, and Benjamin found himself slowing his horse to appreciate the golden light filtering through crimson and amber leaves. His reverie shattered when he approached a small clearing where a crude wooden sign announced, "Girl for indenture, strong worker, make offer." Benjamin reined his horse to a halt, dismounting to read the smaller text beneath. "Inquire at Harper's Tavern." His jaw tightened. While indentures were common enough, the blunt advertisement felt wrong, particularly in these uncertain times, when freedom was on everyone's lips. He'd heard rumors of Loyalists selling family members who sympathized with independence, or worse, selling them to punish those who did. Harper's Tavern proved easy to find, a weathered 2-story building, with several horses tethered outside. Benjamin entered, blinking as his eyes adjusted to the dim interior. The tavern keeper, a corpulent man with shrewd eyes, approached immediately. "What's your pleasure, sir?" "Information," Benjamin replied, keeping his voice measured. "About the indenture offer posted at the crossroads." The tavern keeper's expression shifted to calculating interest. "Ah, Mr. Harper, at your service. You've an interest in the girl, then? 7 years' labor for a fair price? She's young but sturdy." "I'd like to see her first," Benjamin replied, carefully maintaining a neutral tone despite his growing unease. Harper nodded. "She belongs to Thomas Wilson. He's there, the one with the red waistcoat." Benjamin observed a florid-faced man drinking heavily at a corner table. Even from a distance, the sour smell of spirits reached him. Thomas Wilson's expensive but ill-maintained clothing suggested someone whose fortunes had fallen considerably. "Why? Is he selling an indenture?" Benjamin asked casually. Harper shrugged. "Claims his daughter's become a burden. Can't speak, you see. Deaf as a post since birth. Wilson's wife died years back, and word is he's returning to England soon. Staunch loyalist, that one." Benjamin's stomach turned. A father selling his own daughter, and a deaf one at that, struck him as unconscionable. "Where is she now?" "Out back, in the storage shed. Wilson didn't want her frightening customers." Harper chuckled, as though sharing a fine jest. "Not that she's fearsome, just makes those odd hand gestures and sounds. Unnerving to some." Benjamin stepped outside and rounded the building, finding a dilapidated shed with a crude padlock. He peered through a crack between the wooden slats. Inside sat a girl of perhaps 15 or 16, though her slight frame made her appear younger. Her brown hair fell in a simple braid over her shoulder, and her plain dress, while worn, was neat. Most striking were her eyes, large, intelligent, and alert, taking in everything around her. She was systematically sorting a pile of kitchen vegetables, her movements precise and organized. What Benjamin had expected, tears, fear, dejection, was absent. Instead, he saw dignity and quiet determination in her methodical work. She looked up suddenly, sensing his presence, her eyes finding the crack where he stood, rather than shrinking back. She straightened her posture and met his gaze directly, her expression a silent challenge. Benjamin returned to the tavern, mind racing. His mission allowed no delay, but neither could he leave this girl to whatever fate awaited her. He approached Wilson directly. "I understand you're offering your daughter's indenture." he said, settling into the chair opposite the man. Wilson squinted at him. "You don't look like a farmer needing help." "I'm a ship's captain," Benjamin replied, offering the partial truth that formed his pre-war profession, currently transporting goods along the coast. It wasn't entirely false. He occasionally commanded vessels for the Continental Forces. "A ship?" Wilson seemed to brighten. "That might be suitable. She's useless. For conversation anyway." Benjamin maintained his composure with effort. "What price are you asking?" £50, Wilson declared. "She's 16 and healthy, can cook, clean, mend, everything a proper girl should do, just can't hear or speak proper." £50 for an indenture is steep, Benjamin countered. "Especially for someone with her limitations." Wilson's face darkened. 35 then, but not a shilling less." 30, Benjamin countered, "and she comes with me today." After brief haggling, Benjamin counted out £30, nearly all the money he carried for his mission. Wilson scrawled an indenture contract on a scrap of paper, his handwriting deteriorating as it progressed. Benjamin noted with disgust that the man misspelled his own daughter's name. Sarah Wilson became Sarah Wilson. "Her things?" Benjamin asked, as Wilson pocketed the money. Wilson waved dismissively. "What she's wearing is hers, nothing else." Benjamin had Harper unlock the shed. The girl, Sarah, emerged, squinting into the sunlight. Her eyes darted between the men, wariness evident in her posture. Harper spoke loudly and slowly. "This man bought your contract. You go with him now." Sarah's expression didn't change, but Benjamin noticed her hands tighten into fists at her sides. "She can't hear you," Benjamin said quietly, "but she's not blind, and I suspect she's far from stupid." He approached Sarah slowly, hands visible, and bowed slightly in greeting. Her eyes widened in surprise at the gesture of respect. Benjamin pointed to himself, then to her, then to the road, raising his eyebrows in question. Sarah studied him intently, her gaze traveling from his face to his well-worn but quality clothing, to his hands, which bore calluses from work, not from idleness. Whatever she saw apparently satisfied her, for she gave a single, dignified nod. Benjamin led her to his horse, offering her his hand to help her mount. She hesitated, then accepted, settling side saddle while he took the reins to lead the horse. On foot, as they departed, Benjamin noticed Sarah didn't look back at the tavern or at the man who had sold her service. They travelled in silence, the only kind possible between them, until reaching a small stream where Benjamin indicated they would rest. Sarah slid gracefully from the horse and immediately began gathering wood for a fire, her movements practiced and efficient. Benjamin watched her work, marvelling at her self-possession. He took out paper and quill from his saddlebag, wrote carefully, and offered it to her. "Can you read?" the note asked. Sarah took the paper, studied it, then nodded. She gestured for the quill and wrote beneath his question, "Yes, Mother taught me before she died." Benjamin felt a surge of relief. At least they could communicate. He wrote again, "I am Benjamin Miller. I will not harm you. You are safe." She read his words, her expression revealing nothing. After a moment she wrote, "Where are we going?" Benjamin hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Concord first, then Boston, where I have connections who can help us find a proper situation for you." Sarah considered this, then wrote, "You are not a merchant captain." Benjamin's eyebrows rose in surprise. She was observant. He shook his head and wrote, "Continental Army, Captain Benjamin Miller." She nodded as if confirming a suspicion, then wrote, "My father called Patriots traitors." Benjamin smiled slightly and wrote, "What do you think?" She studied him again, then carefully wrote, "I think you did not buy me to be kind. What do you want from me?" Her directness was refreshing. Benjamin wrote, "Only to help. No one should be sold by their father. When we reach Boston, you will have choices. Sarah read his words, suspicion still evident in her eyes, but some of the tension left her shoulders. She pointed to the paper again and wrote one more sentence. "Thank you for not shouting at me as if I am simple." As evening approached, they continued their journey toward Concord. Benjamin realized his mission would be delayed, but as he watched, Sarah walking beside the horse, her steps steady and her gaze forward, he knew some duties transcended military orders. This silent girl, sold by the person who should have protected her most, deserved a chance at the very freedom they were all fighting to secure. By nightfall, they reached a small inn where Benjamin arranged 2 rooms. As he handed Sarah the key to her door, he realized she was truly the first person in years he had felt compelled to protect since Eleanor's death. The thought was both comforting and terrifying, a reminder of connections he'd long avoided. Sleep came slowly to Benjamin that night as he contemplated the unexpected turn his simple mission had taken. In rescuing Sarah from one fate, he had yoked his own future to hers, at least until he could ensure her safety and independence. And in the silent exchanges of their first day together, something had shifted in his long, dormant heart. The realization that sometimes the greatest revolutions begin not on battlefields, but in single acts of human decency. The journey to Concord took 3 days, during which Benjamin discovered Sarah's remarkable adaptability. Each morning she rose before him, preparing whatever simple breakfast their supplies allowed. She watched his movements carefully, learning his habits and preferences without need for instruction. Their communication evolved rapidly. Notes became insufficient, so Benjamin began teaching Sarah the hand signals used by naval officers during battle, when voices couldn't carry over cannon fire. She absorbed these with astonishing speed, adding embellishments that transformed the utilitarian signals into something more expressive. By the second evening, Sarah had created new gestures to represent common words and concepts. Benjamin found himself learning her language as much as she learned his. There was something profound in this silent exchange, a connection forming through necessity that might never have existed otherwise. The Continental Army headquarters in Concord, occupied, a former merchant's home, bustling with officers and messengers. Benjamin's arrival with Sarah drew curious glances, but wartime had accustomed people to unusual circumstances. He delivered his dispatches, explaining his delay with a vague reference to unexpected responsibilities. Colonel James Richardson, Benjamin's superior officer, received his report with raised eyebrows. 3 days late, Miller. Not like you. Unavoidable, sir, Benjamin replied, conscious of Sarah standing quietly beside him. Richardson's gaze shifted to her. And who might this be? Sarah Wilson, sir. A ward who came under my protection during my journey. Richardson's eyes narrowed slightly. I wasn't aware you had family in Sheffield. She's not family, Benjamin admitted. Her father was selling her indenture. The circumstances were concerning. So you purchased it? Richardson looked incredulous. In the middle of a war? She's deaf, sir. Her father was a Loyalist, abandoning her to return to England. Understanding dawned in Richardson's eyes. Ah, one of those situations, he sighed. Your compassion does you credit, Miller, but this complicates matters. We need you on the coastal patrol next week. I'm aware, sir. I intend to find suitable arrangements for her in Boston before then. Richardson studied Sarah more carefully. She seems intelligent enough. Can she read and write? Benjamin nodded. Very well, in fact. Interesting. Richardson seemed to consider something. Our regular transcriptionist took ill last week, copying dispatches, maintaining records. Nothing sensitive, of course, but necessary work. Benjamin glanced at Sarah, who was observing their conversation intently. Though she couldn't hear, she was clearly following their interaction through expressions and body language. You're suggesting she work here? Benjamin asked, surprised. Temporarily. She can't repeat what she never hears, can she? Richardson smiled slightly. A perfect confidant for a military headquarters. We can provide lodging and fair wages against her indenture. Benjamin hesitated. He'd planned to find Sarah a position with a respectable Boston family, perhaps as a seamstress or household helper. Military headquarters seemed inappropriate for a young woman, yet there was wisdom in Richardson's suggestion. Here her deafness would be considered an asset rather than a limitation. He quickly wrote a note, explaining the colonel's offer to Sarah. She read it, her expression thoughtful, then looked up at Richardson with assessing eyes. She wrote beneath, Benjamin's note. I would prefer this to domestic service. Benjamin translated her response, and Richardson nodded approvingly. Good. Mrs. Hammond oversees the household staff. She'll arrange appropriate accommodations. Later that evening, after Sarah had been settled in the women's quarters, Benjamin found himself walking the grounds, surprisingly unsettled by this resolution. He had accomplished what he'd set out to do, rescued Sarah from an uncertain fate, and secured her respectable employment. Why then did it feel incomplete? Mrs. Hammond, a practical woman in her 50s who managed the headquarters' domestic affairs, approached him. Your young lady is settled in, Captain Miller. Quite a remarkable girl. She's not my young lady, Benjamin corrected reflexively. Mrs. Hammond raised an eyebrow. No? Then why look so forlorn? She'll be well treated here. I know, it's just... Benjamin struggled to articulate his concern. She's been through much. I want to ensure she's truly safe. From what I've observed, she's quite capable, Mrs. Hammond said. Within an hour of arrival, she reorganized our linen storage more efficiently than I've managed in months. Did it all without instruction? Benjamin smiled despite himself. That sounds like Sarah. She showed me some of your hand signals, Mrs. Hammond continued. Clever system. I've already learned yes, no, and tea, please. You're communicating with her? Benjamin asked, surprised. Of course. The girl deserves conversation like anyone else. Mrs. Hammond's expression softened. Captain, your concern is admirable, but trust that others can care for her too. The revolution needs you elsewhere. Benjamin nodded, knowing she was right. His coastal mission departed in 4 days. Sarah had found a place where her skills were valued. What more could he have hoped for? The next morning, Benjamin found Sarah in the headquarters' small library, carefully transcribing documents. Her penmanship was impeccable, each letter formed with precision. She looked up as he entered, her face brightening momentarily before adopting a more composed expression. Using their developing sign language, Benjamin asked if she was comfortable with her arrangements. Sarah nodded, her hands moving to explain that Mrs. Hammond had been kind and the work was interesting. She hesitated, then signed a question. When would he be leaving? 4 days, he signed back. Coastal mission. Sarah nodded again, her expression carefully neutral. She gestured to the papers before her, indicating she needed to return to work. Benjamin felt oddly dismissed. He had expected, what? Gratitude? Sadness? He wasn't sure. He nodded and left her to her tasks, telling himself this professional distance was precisely what he'd hoped for. Sarah adjusting well, independent of his intervention. The following days established a rhythm. Benjamin attended to his military duties, preparing for his upcoming mission. Sarah integrated herself into headquarters operations with remarkable efficiency. Each evening, they would see each other at dinner, exchanging brief signed conversations, before retiring to their separate quarters. On the eve of his departure, Benjamin found Sarah in the garden, behind headquarters. She sat on a stone bench, a book open in her lap, though her attention was on the sunset painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. She noticed his presence and made room for him on the bench. Closing her book, a collection of Shakespeare's sonnets, he noted with surprise. You read poetry, he signed. "My mother loved it," she replied with her hands. "Father thought it useless." Benjamin nodded, understanding more about her upbringing in that simple statement than in all their previous exchanges. "I leave tomorrow," he signed, though they both already knew. Sarah nodded. After a moment, her hands moved. "Will you return here?" "Eventually," he confirmed, "when the mission is complete." She seemed to consider this, then signed, "I will continue learning while you're gone." "Learning what?" he asked. "Everything," she replied, a small smile playing at her lips. "Reading all these books, learning more signs. Mrs. Hammond is teaching me to use herbs from the garden." Benjamin felt a strange mixture of pride and something like loss. In just a week, Sarah had created a place for herself here, perhaps better than any he could have. "Arranged in Boston. You've done well," he signed. Sarah studied him, then surprised him by taking out the small notebook she now carried everywhere. She wrote a longer message than their sign language could easily accommodate. "Before you found me, I lived in silence and isolation. Father saw my deafness as divine punishment. Here, people look at what I can do, not what I cannot hear. You gave me that, thank you." Benjamin read her words, touched by their sincerity. He took the quill she offered and wrote beneath her message, "You have always been worthy of respect, Sarah. Your father's failings were his own, never yours. I'm grateful our paths crossed." She read his response, her eyes lingering on the page. When she looked up, her expression had softened. She raised her hands and signed something new, a gesture he didn't recognize. When he shook his head in confusion, she smiled and wrote, "It means friend in my own language. I've been creating words for things that matter." Benjamin practiced the sign until she nodded in approval. Then, impulsively, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, a carved wooden star he had made during evening watches. It was a habit from his seafaring days, whittling to pass quiet hours. "For luck," he signed, pressing it into her palm. Sarah examined the star, running her finger along its points, then carefully tucked it into her dress pocket. She signed, "Thank you," and then, after a slight hesitation, added the sign for friend. The next morning, Benjamin departed with the coastal patrol. As the headquarters disappeared behind him, he found himself wondering what new words Sarah would create in his absence, and whether, upon his return, she might teach them to him. For the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to coming back from a mission, rather than merely focusing on the duty ahead. If you enjoyed this story of friendship and courage during America's fight for independence, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of heroism throughout history. New chapters released weekly. Don't miss the conclusion of Benjamin and Sarah's journey in Chapter 3. The coastal mission stretched from its original 2 weeks into a full month. October faded into November, bringing early winter storms that battered the Massachusetts shoreline. Benjamin's patrol intercepted British supply vessels, gathered intelligence from coastal villages, and twice narrowly avoided direct confrontation with Royal Navy warships. Throughout the cold, demanding days, thoughts of Sarah remained a curious constant in his mind, wondering how she was faring at headquarters, whether she felt truly accepted, and if she was continuing to develop her unique language of signs. When Benjamin finally returned to Concord in early December, the headquarters had transformed. Garlands of pine and holly adorned doorways, preparations for the Christmas season continuing despite the war. He arrived late in the evening, delivering his reports to Colonel Richardson before seeking out familiar faces. "Your young lady has become quite indispensable," Richardson commented as they concluded their meeting. "Most efficient transcriptionist we've ever had, and she's developed a remarkable system for organizing our dispatches." "She's resourceful," Benjamin acknowledged, ignoring the "your young lady" reference that seemed to have become commonplace. "More than that," Richardson said, "she's teaching the staff to communicate with hand signals. Even taught me a few. He demonstrated several signs with surprising accuracy, useful in situations requiring silence. Benjamin felt an unexpected surge of pride. Where is she now? The library, most likely, spends her evenings there when not working. Benjamin found Sarah exactly where Richardson had predicted, seated at a table surrounded by books and papers. A single candle illuminated her work, a drawing of what appeared to be hands in various positions, with notations beside each gesture. So absorbed was she that she didn't notice his arrival until he deliberately stepped into her line of sight. Her eyes widened in recognition. For a brief moment, her composure faltered, revealing genuine delight before she recovered her usual dignified demeanor. She stood, her hands quickly signing. "You've returned, safely." "As promised," he signed back, noticing her movements were even more fluid than before. "You've been busy," Sarah nodded, gesturing to her papers. Benjamin moved closer to examine them, detailed illustrations documenting an expanded language of signs, with English translations carefully noted beside each drawing. "You're creating a dictionary," he realized aloud, forgetting momentarily that she couldn't hear him. She seemed to understand nonetheless, nodding as she wrote on a blank sheet. "A complete language." Mrs. Hammond suggested others might want to learn, especially families with deaf children. Benjamin studied the meticulous work before him. What had begun as simple communication between them had evolved into something potentially transformative for others facing similar challenges. "It's remarkable," he signed, the inadequacy of the word striking him immediately. Sarah's expression warmed at his approval. She signed rapidly, her hands forming shapes both familiar and new. When she saw his confusion at the unfamiliar gestures, she slowed, teaching him as they conversed. They spent hours in the library that night, Sarah showing Benjamin the life she had built in his absence. Beyond her work as a transcriptionist, she had become something of an instructor, teaching basic signs to the headquarters staff. Mrs. Hammond had introduced her to other women in Concord, including a mother with a deaf son who now visited weekly. "For lessons. You're no longer just surviving," Benjamin signed after she had shared these developments. "You're thriving." Sarah considered this, then signed back. "Because you saw me as whole, not broken." The simple statement affected Benjamin deeply. He had never consciously thought of it that way, but she was right. He had never viewed her deafness as defining her worth or capabilities. The following weeks established a new pattern. Benjamin, now assigned to headquarters for the winter, resumed his duties coordinating coastal defenses. Sarah continued her transcription work, but with added responsibilities, teaching her developing sign language to interested staff and community members. Their evenings often found them together in the library or by the fire in the common room, conversing in their increasingly sophisticated, silent language. Benjamin found himself sharing stories he had never told anyone. About Eleanor, about his life before the war, about his hopes for the nation they were helping to create. Sarah, in turn, revealed more of her childhood, the mother who had nurtured her intelligence before passing away when Sarah was 10, and the subsequent years under her father's resentful care. As Christmas approached, Concord prepared for modest celebrations despite wartime privations. Benjamin found himself looking for a suitable gift for Sarah, something to acknowledge their unique friendship. Inspiration came unexpectedly during a meeting with a bookbinder in town, who was creating protective covers for headquarters' important documents. On Christmas morning, the headquarters staff exchanged simple gifts, knitted items, preserved foods, small luxuries salvaged from increasingly scarce supplies. Benjamin waited until the formal exchange had concluded before approaching Sarah privately. "I have something for you," he signed. Sarah looked surprised. "You've already given me so much." "This is different," he replied, presenting her with a package wrapped in plain brown paper. Sarah unwrapped it carefully to reveal a leather-bound book with blank pages, its cover embossed with a simple star, matching the wooden one he had given her before his departure. The binding was designed to lay flat when open, with ample space for writing and drawing. "For your dictionary," Benjamin signed. "Something permanent." Sarah ran her fingers over the cover, her expression softening. "It's beautiful," she signed. "But I have nothing for you." Benjamin shook his head. "You've given me a new language, a new way to see the world." She considered this, then reached into her pocket and withdrew something. The wooden star he had carved for her, now attached to a simple cord as a pendant. She had worn it hidden beneath her collar every day since he'd given it to her. "I made this wearable," she signed. "Now I have a matching set." She gestured to the book and the necklace. "Your gift becomes part of me, as your friendship has." The simple sentiment affected Benjamin more than any elaborate declaration could have. This quiet young woman, who had entered his life through the most unlikely circumstances, had somehow reopened parts of his heart he had thought permanently closed after Eleanor's death. Winter deepened, bringing harsh conditions, but also a natural pause in the conflict as both armies struggled against the elements. In February 1776, news reached headquarters of a potential spring offensive that would require Benjamin to return to coastal operations by March. "Will you stay here when I leave?" he asked Sarah one evening as they sat by the fire. The headquarters had grown quiet, most staff already retired for the night. Sarah considered the question, then signed, "My indenture belongs to you." "That paper means nothing to me," Benjamin signed emphatically. "You are free to choose your own path." She studied him for a long moment, then retrieved her notebook and wrote instead of signing, "What if my chosen path wishes to follow yours?" Benjamin read her words several times, understanding the deeper question. "The coast will be dangerous," he signed. "War zones are no place for—" She cut him off with a decisive gesture, then wrote, "For a woman, for someone deaf. I have survived. Being unwanted, being sold, being dismissed as worthless. I'm stronger than I appear, Benjamin Miller." The use of his full name, something she rarely signed or wrote, emphasized her seriousness. Benjamin realized he had fallen into the same trap as others, underestimating her because of a single characteristic. "You're right," he acknowledged. "I apologize." Sarah's expression softened. She wrote again, "I don't wish to impose myself where unwanted, but these past months have shown me my value, that I can contribute meaningfully to this cause, whether here or elsewhere." Benjamin considered her words carefully. The truth was, the prospect of continuing their partnership, for that was what it had become, filled him with unexpected hope, but he needed to be certain she understood the reality of what she was proposing. "Life following a military unit is difficult," he signed, "uncomfortable, sometimes dangerous." Sarah smiled slightly and signed, "Life is uncomfortable and dangerous for many people right now. At least this discomfort would have purpose." As winter began yielding to early spring, Benjamin and Sarah presented their proposition to Colonel Richardson. Sarah would continue her transcription duties, but as part of the mobile headquarters that would support coastal operations. Her growing dictionary of signs would be developed into a field communication system, potentially valuable during operations requiring silence. Richardson, ever practical, saw the merit immediately. "Frankly, I've been concerned about our field communications. Visual signals that can't be intercepted like verbal passwords." Brilliant. By early March 1776, as the Continental Army prepared for what would become a pivotal year in the Revolution, Benjamin found himself no longer the solitary figure he had been the previous autumn. Sarah traveled with the headquarters unit, her presence transforming not just his life, but the operations of those around them. Her silent language spread among the troops, creating bonds of communication that transcended traditional barriers. On The evening before the first major coastal operation of the season, Benjamin found Sarah at the edge of camp, watching the sunset over Massachusetts Bay. The sea breeze caught her hair, now grown longer and typically worn in a practical braid. She sensed his approach and turned, smiling in greeting. "Nervous about tomorrow?" he signed. She shook her head. "Purposeful," she corrected. Benjamin nodded, understanding completely. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the changing colors of the sky. After several minutes, Sarah tapped his arm to gain his attention. "I've created a new sign," she told him with her hands. "Show me," he replied. Her hands moved in a gesture that combined their existing signs for family and chosen, but with a unique flowing motion that connected them. "What does it mean?" he asked. "Those who find each other," she explained with additional signs. "Who create bonds by choice rather than birth." Benjamin practiced the movement, feeling the significance of what she had created. Not just a word, but a concept that defined their unlikely journey together. From a captain who had lost his way after personal tragedy and a young woman who had been discarded by the family meant to protect her, they had forged something neither could have anticipated. "It's perfect," he signed finally. Sarah's smile deepened as she reached out to correct the position of his fingers slightly, her touch light but sure. In that moment, Benjamin understood with perfect clarity that the revolution they were fighting extended far beyond political freedom from Britain. True liberty would mean recognizing the worth and potential of every individual, including those society had too often overlooked or undervalued. As darkness fell over the coast, they would defend tomorrow. Benjamin and Sarah returned to camp. Side by side, whatever challenges the coming months might bring, they would face them together, communicating in a language uniquely their own, a silent testament to the quiet revolutions that can transform individual lives even amidst the thunder of history's more famous battles. Thank you for joining Benjamin and Sarah on their journey through the American Revolution. If you enjoyed this tale of friendship, courage, and finding connection against all odds, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of heroism throughout history. From untold Revolutionary War accounts to Civil War bravery and beyond, we bring history to life one story at a time.